EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, brother?
15 days away. Let's get this draft up and over with, man.
I know, man. We were just
Yeah.
talking draft pre-show. Not the most glowing review of the draft coming from the hosts of Birds 365, but 15 days away, John. It is creeping up on us. They added another visit yesterday, but what dominated the Eagle land yesterday was a comment from Justin Simmons. So we'll talk about that here in the open. We got two great guests planned on the show today, our usual Wednesday suspects, Mike Gil in hour number 1 and Brandon Lee Gouton in hour number 2. But Johnny Mac, 15 days away. Let's give the update on the top 30 visits. A Georgia Bulldog coming in to bolster the Philadelphia Bulldogs. Tell us about it, Johnny.
Yeah, what a shocker, huh? Looking at another Georgia prospect, defensive line. Everything's been defensive front on this draft, and rightfully so. They've looked at so many of them. Latest being Georgia. Versatile edge, can play inside, so he's got a little bit of both. Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, some people project him on the edge because he weighs 280, 85 pounds. He's 6'5". Some people project him inside because he's a little bit too big for the edge, especially in the modern game. So he's one of those tweener guys, more of a toolsy prospect, very athletic, not a ton of production. And more of a day 2 guy, I would say, in the mix, and really third round for me. I'm not even talking second round for this particular prospect, but you gotta draft people outside the first round. So even though there's at last check, according to Daniel Jeremiah, 67 first round picks.
Yeah, they're gassing up the draft. They have some of the NFL guys gassing up the draft. Not the greatest.
No. To be fair, to DJ was joking. He said,
no, I know. Yeah, because everybody says everybody's the first rounder. Yeah?
Exactly.
Well, I'm looking at the breakdown, John. So another Georgia guy comes in, projected around a third rounder. You just trying to read the tea leaves here, John. All right. Looking at the visits that we know, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is now up to 19 out of 30 names after the latest Georgia defensive lineman. First round potential guys that they've looked at. There's a defensive end, a defensive tackle, a cornerback, and an offensive lineman. Second round potentials, and these are just kind of projected by me. Offensive line, defensive line, cornerback. Third round projected, offensive line, cornerback, edge, defensive line. So the theme is there, John. It's clearly there in those top 3 rounds. And the most surprising one, which we talked about yesterday, 3 corners. There's a first-round projected corner. There's a second-round projected corner, really 2 guys that are right in that tweener mix, and then a third-round projected corner in Jacob Parrish. So the themes are developing with the visits, so it is interesting to see what they're going to do in this draft.
Yeah, well, obviously it's interesting in any draft, but I think, heavily I'm leaning towards defensive front. That's only increased after looking at what they're doing and just from the nature of the draft and the position that's probably the deepest if you want to combine them, edge rusher and interior. There's a ton of defensive front people to pick from, and odds are that the Eagles are going to like one of them. As those 67 first-round picks push somebody down the board. So somebody's going to be there that they like, and that, to me, remains the most likely option. But, if they like somebody and they fall and it's at a different position, they're savvy enough to do that. One thing, though, when you talk about players falling unexpectedly, I think they learned something from Andre Dillard, which was a player that they thought they had no chance to get, and evidently started falling. They didn't do a ton of homework on him, and they said, "What's going on here?" And they went up to get him, and it didn't work. So, I think they learned from that. I think that's one of Howie's strengths. When he does make a mistake, he does learn from it. And there was an indication of a guy they didn't fully do homework on because they didn't think they'd have a shot at him. And he drifted a little bit. They had a shot, and they seized it, and didn't work. But,
maybe needed to do a little more homework on Andre Dillard, but all good there. Johnny Mac, the thing that's dominating all over Eagle Land, though, is Justin Simmons. It's almost like he's already a seasoned media vet, and he knows that the Philadelphia audience will respond if he invokes their name. All right. And he has been talking about Philly again. So he was on Kay Adams' show with her, speaking about the connection with Vic Fangio and how much it means to have that connection. Is Justin Simmons a good fit for the 2025 Eagles, John?
I think so, depending on how much is left. For those reasons, obviously, he already knows the scheme. He talked himself up. He's playing the game, as you mentioned. He clearly wants to be here. Once he's lobbying, essentially, he wants to reunite with Vic Fangio. He kind of mentioned, for people that listened to the whole interview, or how difficult it was to change defenses in Atlanta. Didn't have his best season. And the one thing he knows, Vic's, not that he's perfect at it, but he knows what Vic wants accomplished, and he's had a lot of success, and he's comfortable in it. So to me, it makes a ton of sense. The problem is he's 31, obviously, clearly a descending player for what he once was, and he has this big reputation. So, Joe Banner used to call it the big name trap.
Right.
And people think, well, yeah, this is a 4-time second-team All-Pro. And that's the expectation. He's not that player anymore. So that can create some issues, but clearly the Eagles don't want to mess with the compensatory pick formula. So this will be something they address after the draft. And he himself said he's thinking about training camp more than anything.
Right.
He might not want to be around till training camp. So this is you could probably do a wink deal and say, hey, we're going to bring you in whenever. A lot of teams have already done that. Believe me, Asante Samuel, guys like that who are still out there, they probably got wink deals done with some team playing the compensatory pick game and say,
right.
wait, we'll bring you in. Not for a ton of money, but same thing with Justin Simmons. And with his reputation and his not his reputation, but his relationship with Vic and also Christian Parker, who he mentioned. It's logical that he'll be here. But don't expect a 4-time second-team All-Pro. I don't. But, that is obviously a warning that is probably going to go ignored.
No doubt about it. Can he age like Slay? I mean, Slay had obviously some excellent career accolades as well, and played well. Changed up his style a little bit late in his career, but played well here in Philly. So maybe Justin Simmons can age nicely. I agree with you. He's not going to be the player that he was in his prime, but maybe he's better than the options they have right now at safety with Sidney Brown and Tristan McCullum and whoever else you think might get that starting job. So I think it would be all right, but I'm not super enamored, John, by the older guys anymore. I'm really not. That's a good question here. Any parallels to the Byard move? I do get a little bit of that.
Well, from the standpoint, obviously Byard was a trade-in season. Obviously he'll be coming in earlier. That makes it easier. He understands the scheme, so probably a little bit more upside than that. But he didn't play well last year. He played a lot, and he didn't play well. And maybe it was just a new scheme and all that kind of stuff. But you have to be wary of aging players who don't play well. I think he'll bounce back a little bit from that because it is familiar to him, and he is comfortable with Vic and Christian if it comes to pass. But yeah, I mean, I worry about those big name traps as people, as people know from listening to me over the years. And this game moves quickly, and it's a young man's game. And I don't like the slight comparison because he's a 6-time pro. 3 of his Pro Bowls were made here.
Yeah.
He was playing at a high level when he first got here. As you age as a cornerback, obviously, and even last year, I mean,
right.
played really good football. Simmons did not play really good football last year. So he's a little bit younger from that perspective. And he's at a position where you can play a little bit later as opposed to cornerback typically. But Slay's a different type of cat, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
better player. Let's be real. Slay is a better player.
He was last year. And you know, maybe just part of that is supporting cast, better team, yada yada.
I think better coaching too. You know, some
Better
people are
coaching.
pointing out the coaching disaster of 2023 maybe also contributed to Kevin Byard because he didn't have a bad year last year. I forget who he was with. I want to say it was
Chicago.
the Bears. I knew it. Yeah, I thought it was the Bears.
He didn't have a great year, but
No, he didn't have a great year, but maybe
not what he was.
No,
he was a big time player in Tennessee. And you know, he's had a great career. I'm not trying to dismiss Kevin. He's, by the way, phenomenal guy, leader, all that kind of stuff. And he was pretty solid on a bad team, heck of a lot better than Simmons, I would say. And yeah, you know, maybe not maybe, obviously the defensive upheaval and the shift from Sean Desai, Matt Patricia affected everybody. Plus he's coming in mid-season.
Yeah.
So I think he would have been better with Vic Fangio. I don't think there's any question. I think everybody would have been better. Yeah, I mean,
it's way in hindsight now, boy, but that 2023 season is a weird season to look back on the way that thing unfolded.
Well, yeah, I still have trouble figuring it out. I think the biggest, and I've said it pretty consistently, I think the biggest mistake was shifting from Sean Desai to
I agree.
Matt Patricia in season. Not that Sean was great, but I just don't think the upheaval helped. Yeah.
No, there's no way it helped. And I mean, there's no way to know what if the team would have collapsed to the same level. But all right, if you didn't like your defensive coordinator, you get to the end of the year and you move on like every other team. But it just looks so different.
Exactly.
With the way the Eagles did it.
And that's what I would have done. I'm not saying Sean should have been back.
I agree.
But I would have moved on after the season.
Yeah.
And from that standpoint, and there was some upheaval in Atlanta, obviously. And they weren't a good team. Boy, I can't even remember who their defensive coordinator was. Chep Olbrich got the job this year. Oh, boy. Oh, Jimmy Lake. Yeah, it's like, all right, you know. So all that contributed, I'm sure. And he'd be in a much better situation here. And the Eagles need the insurance policy. But if he comes in, he's a Dory Jackson. It's like you still want the young guy to win the job. But in the case knowing Vic, knowing he's comfortable with him, I think Justin Simmons will have a very good chance to play if he signs with the Eagles.
Yeah, he's going to want to start, though. Like you just said, the Birds will probably want the young guy to win. Doesn't mean he will, but they'll want him to.
Well, yeah, Howie's got to be, Howie's got to be careful about this. I always bring up Moneyball, one of my favorite movies ever. And Brad Pitt's playing Billy Bean, and Philip Seymour Hoffman's playing.
That's a movie I've actually seen, John. It's a good movie.
Yeah. And the manager, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Art Howe, won't play who Billy Bean wants him to play. So at one point he had to trade. He said, "All right, screw it. I'm trading. I'm taking the option away from you." If you're going to ask me right now and you sign Justin Simmons is going to be your starting safety.
Right.
Adoree Jackson, I'm going to bet is going to be your starting corner.
Yeah, that was my bet yesterday too when we did our projected starters.
So if you're Howie Roseman and you want Kaylee Ringo to play or you want Sidney Brown to play, and I'm not saying he does, but if that's what he wants, he's got to be careful. I mean, he's got to take some. He's got a Billy Bean, Vic Fangio a little bit.
Yeah, only give him what he needs, not what he wants, and give him. So we'll see what ends up happening with Justin Simmons. But yeah, no, it is funny listening to him go on the K Adams show. He clearly is interested in playing in Philly. I think that's pretty obvious the way he's talking about Philly. So we will see what happens. And if they go down that road. The other news today, if you're just checking in on the show, we appreciate all you guys checking in, is the another top 30 visit, number 19. What was his name, John? The Georgia guy. I keep blanking on this guy.
Killing me, man. I can't remember this kid's name. And I just wrote the story yesterday. Boy, this draft is starting to annoy me. It's Tyrion Ingram Dawkins.
Ingram Dawkins. That's what it is.
Can we be honest about this draft?
Yeah, we're going to have to be honest with the people, John, about this draft.
This draft stinks.
Yeah, this draft is not the best.
And they'll be good players, don't get me wrong. And, a lot of them will be on non-sexy positions, obviously, and most of them. Boy, you were mentioning even the top 10. I'm like, I'm going to pick on the Giants again, which I seem to do every day.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you do if you're Brian Daboll? What do you do? And not that he's making the decision, but Joe Shane's in the same camp. You can't draft a quarterback. The quarterback's going to stink on ice.
I know.
And even if he develops down the road, you're long gone by the time if you draft Shedeur Sanders, by the time he does anything. Maybe he turns into Brock Purdy. Maybe he turns into a competent, and I shouldn't, that's disparaging Brock, a well above average NFL quarterback. But it ain't happening year one. And you're out of town. You can't play him. Instead of getting Abdul Carter maybe, or Travis Hunter, a guy who can hit the ground running, maybe the only two blue chip prospects in this draft. That's a brutal position to be in.
They got to go Abdul Carter and just play Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston.
I would.
Yeah.
I would. It's not even a conversation for me. And Joe Shane's the same because Joe is bigger than Brian, but he's in the same position. He's not going to be around to watch Shedeur Sanders to develop.
No, he's not. So which, by the way, might be better for Shedeur and the whole Giants organization.
Yeah, well, except for the marketing part of it and all that, but which is a big thing off the field. But yeah, whatever. If you're a good quarterback, it doesn't matter where you are; they'll find you. Kansas City hasn't hurt Patrick Mahomes, so that part of it's probably overblown. But what isn't overblown is Joe Shane ain't going to be around for Shedeur Sanders turning into anything. So from his standpoint, and this is why you don't manage your team like John Mayer's managing his team. Like if you as an owner say, I want this kid, I want to develop, well, then you should have fired the coach and the GM because they're not going to be here. And you're going to have that tremendous upheaval for Shedeur Sanders from year one to year two. Just dumb. Everything about that organization has turned dumb, which is weird because they in the Coughlin era, Jerry Reese era, they were one of the smartest teams in football. And now they're one of the dumbest. And they keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah.
Tangent. Right. We should have a tangent buzzer.
Yeah. No, that's a good tangent, though. An accurate tangent, in my opinion, there. Let's get to Mike Gil joining us now here on Birds 365 from 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Here's Mike Gil. Mike, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Wednesday morning? 15 days.
Glad I'm not Brian Daboll, man. I just got the scorn of Johnny Mack.
Well, it's not. What can he do? What can they do, Mike? If they draft a quarterback, it doesn't help them at all. They're out.
Yeah, they're in a lousy position. The team with no quarterback that's on the you're on the quarterback hamster wheel right now, just trying to grab one and hope that it happens. Then you overdraft one, and now you're the coach, and the kid probably can't play. you're a dead man walking. So now if you're John Mara, you're thinking, do I want to fire the coach and pay a new one who's going to go through the same mess here until we find a quarterback? I loved when they hired Dable. I thought he was a good coach. He got them to the playoffs somehow.